Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on into Sports Talk with Broads. Still devastated, still broken, and it's very similar to how I felt when the Phillies lost the World Series, because it's so hard to get to that final game. It's so hard to get to that final series. You just don't know when you're going to return. Now, I love the mental makeup of Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to be a stud. I think he's going to carry this franchise back, and he's so hungry and determined that the rest follow suit. He's that much of a leader. He's that much of a warrior. He's that dedicated to the craft. Yeah, no doubt. But then I look across the way and I look at Andy Reid. Andy Reid is seriously a Hall of Famer. Andy Reid is one of the best we've ever seen as a head coach. Think about how long it took him to finally hoist the Lombardi. He went through an unbelievable era in Philadelphia, which most coaches would sign up for just that. That run right there would be it all. Those years, that long tenure with Donovan McNabb. We thought Donovan McNabb would have one. NFC Championship game, NFC Championship game, NFC Championship game. Donovan McNabb was phenomenal. Andy Reid was phenomenal. He needed to go to Kansas City, have a little bit of a refresh, find Pat Mahomes, and then he was capable of doing it. I'm not trying to play the negative card or the, oh man, this is so harsh, they're never going to get there. That's not what I'm saying, because Andy and Donovan did have multiple cracks at it. And I believe if Jalen has multiple cracks at it, he'll finally get it done. Because did you see how that dude was playing out there? Come on now. He's how old? 24, 25? And he's out there outperforming Patrick Mahomes? Because realistically, the way he played, no, Pat Mahomes didn't have the possessions because of the turnover, which led to 7 points for Kansas City. And because of the special teams blunder, which put the Chiefs at the 5, that wasn't a drive for them to go out there and do anything special. I'm saying, statistically speaking, Pat Mahomes under 200 yards passing, it wasn't a wow day. That's because the Eagles had a lot of the possession due to their game plan, which they executed pretty damn well. Just some huge mistakes. But my point is, right now, a couple days after the Super Bowl, I'm having a little bit of trouble looking at the big picture, saying, oh, they'll be there again. Well, Dave Zangaro did a piece on NBC Sports Philly, and it's pretty interesting. It's not to just crush everyone's soul right now, but it's extremely difficult to get there. I listened to A.J. Brown during the locker cleanout day, and you could tell how much this was hurting him. And it should. I mean, it's hurting us, and I didn't even play in the football game. I couldn't even imagine. That's why when I see Jason Kelce and Travis Kelce hug it out in the middle of the field, and the way Jason handles himself during defeat, God bless him. I know he loves his brother, but the last thing I'm doing in that moment is doing anything Kansas City related. Probably bawling my eyes out. Dude, I played junior A hockey in the USPHL in Boston, and I cried my eyes out when we lost a 3-game series to the Springfield Picks, let alone what a Super Bowl L would do to me. But A.J. Brown brought up something interesting that I did during the post-game show. And when they kicked the field goal in the second half to go up 27-21 on 4th and 5, 4th and 6, he had a feeling. And so did I. Not that kicking the field goal there is a disastrous thing. I'm not blaming Nick Sirianni at all. I'd be able to sleep at night if they went for it, and I'd be able to sleep at night if they kicked the field goal. You're up 3, kicking the field goal to go up 6. Okay, it blocks a field goal from tying it. But knowing Pat Mahomes and the offense you're going up against, and knowing what got you here, being super aggressive, 4th and medium, that's normally a green light. And I was shocked to see it in the moment. And I don't know, is it possible that you look at that and go, yo, AJ, what are you doing, man? Are you admitting that you didn't trust your defense? if I'm Slay, if I'm Bradbury, if I'm Maddox, if I'm anybody else, and I hear one of my best wide receivers say that, are you telling the world that you had zero faith in us stopping them? No, I didn't think A.J. Brown meant it to that level. He's just saying, you know you got to outscore this team. You know you got to apply the pressure. I highlighted that too. I didn't like it. And I remember everyone I watched the game with looking at me, going, dude, you're nuts. You take the points. Nah, not in this era, not in this league. And they go, yeah, well, what if you missed it? And then knowing your defense was getting carved up, then you go down and now you're down 4 because Pat Mahomes probably scored a touchdown. Or, while that sure could be the case, or you score 7, now you're back up 10. And that could have been it. But there's a lot of what-ifs. There's a lot of could-ifs. And that's why it's irritating me, because you just never know when the big game returns. Had a lot of talent on that defense. A lot of guys are free agents. Howie has a lot of decisions to make. Javon Hargrave, Brandon Graham. It's a lot of big names. C.J. Gardner-Johnson, James Bradbury, even though it seems James Bradbury is going to be the one to walk. Now, there's a lot of core pieces, too, though. Hassan Reddick, Slay. There's a lot here to work with, especially offensively. Got to figure out what the center is going to do in Jason Kelce. There's a lot to work with. Jalen Hurts, the contract extension will be definitely a discussion, and you're hearing numbers 45 mil plus. Welcome to the market, my guy. But if you play like that on the world's biggest stage, he had his best game and performed better than the best quarterback we've seen. I mean, this dude's no joke. And I believe in him heavily. We're not even really talking about some of the throws that he made because of the loss. And respect to Dallas Goedert, too, because it seemed like every single one of his catches were contested. While Travis Kelce and all the other guys, Juju's wide open. Speaking of Juju, the dude got murdered on Twitter big time by the whole NFL world after just stupidity. Shows how much people don't have a lot of respect for him around the league. TikTok boy. Isn't that what A.J. Brown called him? I gave the Eagles a lot of credit for the way they handled themselves after the game, and I still do. And then as soon as I say something like that, everyone just goes to the Twitter war machine. But it's all fun and games. When it really mattered and the cameras were in their face 5 seconds afterwards, they handled themselves like men and, did what they needed to do. But here's what it looks like between the coordinators. Brian Johnson seems to be a lock at OC. I heard Adam Schefter say, around the league, he's very well respected and would be an OC elsewhere, if not in Philadelphia. Yeah, I'm super excited about what he brings to the table. His relationship with Jalen Hurts is strong, and it goes a long ways back to Jalen Hurts' his father and playing football. Brian Johnson playing football. The family's super close as a unit, and watching them kind of have this opportunity to maybe be one in the same, if you will, is exciting. Now the question becomes, how does Nick Sirianni handle this? Is he going to be the play caller, or is he going to be CEO? We've seen him be the play caller before, then he gave off those duties to Shane, and Shane had a real feel for the game. Shane had an awesome touch on a lot. Still Nick Sirianni's offense, but during the process of the game, Shane was really on the money. I like Nick, though, in this role of not play calling. Is Brian Johnson ready for that right off the rip? Is there an adjustment period where he gets a portion of it? Like, hey, you're going to focus on this side. You can do certain things, red zone, just things like that. Or it's, hey, this is it, baby. You get the full experience. Let's have at it. I'm cool with either one, but seriously, I like Nick Sirianni just kind of overseeing everything. And whoever your OC is, you trust. So that's just one of the questions that we're going to look at. And it seems it's a slam dunk, by the way. It seems that's the obvious no-brainer lock, is Brian Johnson at OC. What about the defensive coordinator, though? that gets a little bit more tricky. It seems the Eagles D-back coach, Denard Wilson, is one name that's constantly flown out there. He does the defensive pass game coordinator stuff. And I read an interesting piece on The Athletic. Zach Berman wrote it about what Denard Wilson did in the past in other organizations. And it seems a lot of those mocked Jim Schwartz's style more than Jonathan Gannon's style. The difference, though, is you're now in a spot where Jonathan Gannon was right here, right now. So was that just because of what those franchises were running at the time? You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, we are in a model right now currently with Gannon. We're going to try and duplicate that. My thing is, I want tweaks. I don't hate everything Gannon did. I didn't despise everything Gannon did, but there's a problem. And other teams have seen now that there is a problem. Bieniemy going back to the Jags game, watching motion, watching certain plays. And then there's all these Jonathan Gannon supporters saying, well, on this he sent the blitz, on this it's not his fault. It's his fault. It's his fault. Jonathan Gannon gets abused with this philosophy, whether you like it or not. It's real. There's no way in hell. Look, there's a lot that Gannon does deserve credit for. And if he does 9 things well, but there's one thing wrong that he does that irritates, here's the problem. That one flaw is death. And until you fix that, you're going to get carved up. I'm sorry, but if I date back to last season and I see Derek Carr kill you, historically, the same guy that can't even have a job right now is historically killing you. Andy Dalton doesn't miss a pass for the entire first half until the last throw with 20 seconds, 30 seconds to go. It's impossible to succeed if these style of quarterbacks can do that to you. Herbert did the same. It was ridiculous. And then you go to the second half. Complete. 9 straight completions and a touchdown. Oh, what do you know? There's one incomplete. Complete. Straight. It happens way too much. And the first year it happened, it was with bad defensive players. Nate Gary and some others. Fine. There's too much talent for this to happen on this team. And I don't like the excuse that, well, what are you going to do? It's Pat Mahomes and it's Andy Reid. It's the best offensive unit ever. What are you supposed to do? So what, I'm supposed to sit here and say, it's fine? It's fine? Just get pantsed? Do something. Your job is to figure it out. And if you have 0 answers, I have to hold you accountable. I can't just say, well, what are you going to do? You can't get a stop, one stop. I'm asking for one stop. The Cincinnati Bengals figured it out. Every time they touch the ball, they can't score in the second half. Sorry, I have a bar. Right? Answer it. Andy Reid has lost before. Pat Mahomes. Okay, if that means Pat Mahomes has to win every Super Bowl. Every Super Bowl for the rest of time. At least for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Because no one's allowed to figure out Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes. So they better win every single season. And here's another thing for the Gannon supporters out there. You better make sure next year's dominant then. They're not going to have 78 sacks. They're not going to have 70 sacks in the regular season. I don't know if they're going to have the same level of talent on the defense. I think they'll have a very strong defense. I think they'll have a good defense. But if you swap Gannon with a different DC this year, I still think you're doing special things. My point is, you got to move the radar with what that roster is. You don't see Hargrave, BG, all these players with double-digit sacks. And that was a big part of it. Yeah, talent matters. I thought that they would be able to win more matchups in the trenches alone. Not just a Jonathan Gannon thing, a player thing. The field being an issue, guys slipping, Josh Sweat, guys falling on the ground, Reddick falling on the ground. Yeah, I think that hurt them. Not why they lost. Every time I think of reasons why they lost, special teams or the fumble by Jalen Hurts, I go back to JG not even being close just at all. Schematically. Crushed. That's what I keep thinking about. But yeah, individual players, miscommunication, there's a lot of it. But if there's that much miscue, whether it's Slay trying to do something, even the play where James Bradbury had the hold, if you go back and look, 3 seconds before the snap, he's screaming at people, he's doing it. Well, if all these plays, you're talking about miscue and this and that, doesn't that reflect the preparation? Doesn't that reflect? See, like, to me, if Bieniemy's going back to watching how they're so confused on the motion, how this opens up, it's on you then to know that that is something that can hurt you. That's part of it. All right, we run this scheme, X, Y, and Z, right there. That's why we're going to do good. But because we do X, Y, and Z, G and H might become available. Well, you need to be aware of that. That's something that needs to be known. These are our strengths. These are our weaknesses. This is what we succeed in. But if we do it, that means this area is something the other team can take advantage of. What do we do if that's the case? How do we counter that? They had zero answers. It's a lot of talent on this football team. I find it hard to believe that every single possession, that's not the bar for me. I'm sorry. If it's every possession, it's more than just the player sucked that day. I don't get the Jonathan Gannon love. I really don't. And there's a lot of it out there, believe it or not. Now, respectfully, there's a lot of hate, as there should be. And, you know, part of this, I wonder, too, the messenger. Look, you are who you are. You can't fake the person. If someone like D'Amico Ryans runs a similar feel, and Vic Fangio, and that's what this whole lifestyle is these days. It's the way the league is, unfortunately. I don't like the style of it. But the demeanor of the messenger. If Jalen Hurts acts a certain way, and someone else says the same things but doesn't have the same swag, the message doesn't come across the same way. It's the passiveness of whatever JG's personality is that I think hurts the style of it. Like, I just don't think it's the reflection of the person. But you can't change that. It is what it is. But if Carson Wentz said the same thing Jalen Hurts said, the message isn't reached because of the person that it is. But there's obviously a glaring hole in Jonathan Gannon's game. And you're not going to be 1,000% perfect. It's impossible to be. But his glaring killer needs to be fixed. And I was talking to Jeff Mosher about this yesterday. There's people around the league who feel the same way. That look at JG and look at what he does and goes, there's a lot to it. And clearly the results were strong. But there's one huge area that a lot are skeptical on and wonders if there's a correlation. And here's your answer. Yes. Yes. It's a correlation. All right. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I'm sad. And we're going to hear from a lot of fans who are sad too. And then we're going to share our sadness. Quez Watkins looks sad in front of his locker. I'd get rid of Quez. I don't think that's good enough as the 3 wide receiver. You need to upgrade. Now, claiming he's injured, he wanted people to know that and all. Not detailed enough in my eyes. I think you need to upgrade wide receiver 3. It's not cutting it. Unacceptable. There were a lot of times where I needed him to be an opportunistic player. He fell flat on his face. Literally. Anyway, Let's go to the phones, shall we? Oh, see, I'm so unprepared. I'm Jonathan Gannon. That's not right. See, I sit here and rip Jonathan Gannon for how long? 20 minutes? Well, not the whole time. Not the whole time. But we're 20 minutes into the show. I rip JG for not being prepared, and then I start my show off taking calls, and I'm unprepared. Huh. Maybe I should get a head coaching job. All right, here we go.
So heartbroken, man. I mean, it's not fair. It's just not fair. The Chiefs played a great game. You know, I'm not blame anything on them, but and we shot ourselves in the foot plenty, and we have plenty to blame to go around. But how is it going to end on that fucking holding call? Well, I mean, that was complete bullshit. So many calls, so many questionable calls went against us, and not a single one. I'm not going to play that game overall, but that last call to end it was an absolute travesty, and oh my God, it hurts, man. It hurts so bad.
It does hurt. I don't really blame the refs for the loss. I think we got robbed a chance at the end, and knowing it was a game that felt like whoever had the ball last would win, it definitely stings more. But so many calls went against us. The Dallas Goedert play didn't go against us with the bobble. The Devontae Smith one, I thought it was a long and lengthy review. At some point, if you're looking at it this long, it's telling you it needs to stand on the field. Maybe that's where you can have an argument. But for me, after the game, to go the referees and say so much went against us, not really. The fumble by Hurts put up 7 points for the other team. Now, here's why I'm not going to crush him too much. The next drive, he responded. If he came out after that and went 3 and out, well, then, yeah, I'd be even more irritated. But if you go back and look, the second the score was tied up, here come Philadelphia, here comes the Eagles. They went down and they scored a touchdown to take the lead right back. And even when, let's see here. I don't ever want to look at the play-by-play, but I'm going to. I have some friends that rewatched the game already. It's disgusting, isn't it? I'm not rewatching this game ever. So, 14-14. They responded with a 7-minute and 19-second drive, 12 plays, 75 yards. On 4th and 2, there was the penalty flag. And then they went for a 4th and 5. So 2 fourth down conversions, if you will. But one of them was a KC penalty. But that goes back to being aggressive on 4th down. And I thought when they kicked that field goal, that was an area where they could have went for it. And in the moment, this isn't a hindsight thing. I really wanted them to. I just thought that was their DNA. I thought that's who they were. We're going to put our foot on the gas, and we're going to score points. It didn't put you up 2 scores. If you were up 6 already and that put you up 9, different story. You were up 3 points, and it put you up 6. Well, against Patrick Mahomes, what is that? I wonder, analytically speaking, how much that changes the percentage of you winning or not. I'd have to imagine that's why they did it. Hey, if we kick here, the percentage goes up X amount. But I'm fascinated to hear what that number would be. Because to me, against this team, and I don't know if those numbers dictate that, against Pat Mahomes, you have whatever percent. But against Daniel Jones, you get a 90% chance of winning up 6 instead of 3. But against Pat Mahomes, like, is this just a general sense? Or does it factor in that Jonathan Gannon doesn't know what he's doing out there, and Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes, they do? Come on. If the numbers don't tell me that, then I got more to worry about here.
This one hurts so much. I don't believe we lost the game off that last play by the ref. That game was lost with the fumble by Hurts, unfortunately, and our defense not being able to get one stop. And unfortunately, in the second half, special teams issues came up. That was just unacceptable. And, I mean, that's 3 big strikes. You just can't win it like that. But On one positive, I mean, Jalen Hurts is the future. I'll live off of that. It was a great season, a great ride, and just a bittersweet ending. But I'm glad we fought it to the very end. So there's that.
I respect that some people go there, and there's a lot of different coping mechanisms. I'm nowhere even close to saying that it was a good season. I'm proud of them. I think that's like a given, right? And like I said, I'm not knocking you for feeling that way. Whenever tragedy happens in life, there's a lot of different ways. Some people put it right behind them and they just keep their head down and they keep going. Others need a week or two to soak it in, and then they kind of have to hit the refresh button and flush it afterwards. To each their own. I think for me that the fun ride and, hey, let's embrace it and let's enjoy it, I think that's more of a given, and then I'm just disgusted and really hurt and really in a lot of pain. A few years back, I probably did a better job. I think I did a better job of just saying, hey, let's enjoy it. It's about the journey. It's about the experience with the people. But the more and more I go through this, I think, yeah, I know that. I want to win. I want to see the parade. I don't know how often you'll be here. It seems like right now they're bleeding into one another. Phillies go to the World Series, but we got to close it out. Now we're knocking at the door. But I don't know. It's just hard for me to go there. But, yeah, I mean, look, the Hurts fumble, there's no doubt about it that was painful. And it hurt. You're putting up free 7 points for Pat Mahomes. But there was just so much that he did well. It's hard for me to highlight that because even with that factored into the game, you were up 10 points at half. Even factoring that into the game. When Andy Reid kicked the extra point and made it an 8-point game instead of a 9-point game going for 2, or it could have been a 7-point game, which probably wouldn't have changed anything because the Eagles wouldn't have went for 2 on the other end. They would have just tied the game up with an extra point of their own. Even with all that in play, I honestly thought when they went down and tied it with the 2-point conversion, they're winning this football game. Even with the deficiencies of the defense. Because at some point, they have to have the answers, right? At some point, you would think what helped shine all year would push the right buttons and shine when you needed to. And we saw it play out in 2017 the same way, too. So maybe the nostalgia of it brainwashed us a bit, thinking, well, of course, it's going to happen because we've seen it happen before. With all that in play, with the Hurts fumble and the special teams, I needed the defense to do something. The pie chart, though, they're the right areas. Defense, special teams, Hurts' fumble. Maybe the lack of the run game. Like I thought they'd be able to get a little bit more run game going. They put up 35 points. And that's the most the team has put up with an L, by the way, in this game. The big dance. Hurts' numbers were outrageous. He balled out, man. He was so unreal. And it's a shame. We'll remember it because we're looking at the future of what we are. But I heard an interesting kind of layer to this. Maybe it's not impacting others as much because it doesn't feel like this team's going anywhere. Maybe at some point with Andy and Donovan, you kind of knew how much time was left, what you're working with. Jalen Hurts didn't even get a contract extension yet. And even when he does get it, it's not kicked in automatically. You still have a year left of the cheaper money. Which I know that there's teams of fans of other teams out there thinking that's when the Eagles are going to collapse, when you have to start paying Jalen Hurts big bucks, but they don't realize what Howie Roseman can do with salary cap and how he manipulates everything. They'll be just fine. It'll be more difficult. You have to find cheaper talent, secondary pieces with these draft picks so they're not getting paid as much money, but still superior talent and all that. At the end of the day, do you feel it doesn't hurt as much because Jalen will be back, this team will be back, Devontae's young, AJ's young. It seems like you have the replacement for Kelsey whenever that ends up going into the retirement phase. And while you're not wrong, I think there's years of this. I think they'll constantly get back. I think they're always in the mix. And keep in mind, the NFC isn't the AFC. It's not Joe Burrow, Pat Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. Now, who knows? With a flip of a switch, someone could enter the chat One person could get drafted and add a whole new layer to it, no doubt about it. I don't think you're wrong to feel positive that this team can be here for a bit of time. But even being here for a bit of time, Andy Reid couldn't do it here in Philly. Donovan couldn't do it. Now, they weren't willing to put together a roster for Donovan McNabb the way they were with Jalen. They eventually got T.O., but come on. How many times have we discussed the piss-poor wide receivers and how much more you needed to help them? They don't have that issue with Jalen. And if they committed to that earlier with Donovan, would we have gotten the Lombardi prior to 2017? Or is it because we already won one? If we didn't win one, no matter how bright the future was, are we all laying on the side of the road, can't get up and can't get to work because we're that crushed? Possibly. But all I know is these opportunities don't come around often. Think about how many Super Bowl games we've played in from the Andy Reid era to now, including the Andy Reid era. How many big games? I'm not ruling them out. I love this quarterback. This quarterback, outside of Mahomes, who lives on an island, is in that tier of special, special, special. And that's the hardest thing to find. And you have that. So that puts you in the driver's seat every single season. But that's where it eats me up. You just never know. And I'm not doubting that they can get back there. It's more about just pouncing on the moment. And they were in position to, being up 10 at half. And it was their game to win. And they didn't do it. How the game played out felt like it was ours. Let's be honest. At halftime, when you're up, we all thought the same thing. Because they did that all year. They did that to every team all year. Win the possession battle, time of possession. Work it. Drive methodically. And if you need to, they aired it out. It wasn't like their run game was insane. But on that day, the way they worked it, it was enough. They worked in the passing game, hit some bombs, kept Mahomes off the field. I really liked their offensive game plan. I really did. I thought it was the way they should have went about business. And outside of a couple mistakes here and there with the play clock and all, they did what they wanted to. That's why I felt great. Problem is, Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid did exactly what they wanted to, too. But when Spags needed it, flushed Jalen Hurts out of the pocket, forced a punt, stopped the Eagles' offense. Jonathan Gannon couldn't do it. There's your difference. There's your difference. All right, everyone. Thank you all so much. This isn't going anywhere, unfortunately. Thank you, guys. Catch you on the next one.